Hello guys, and welcome back to the series on how to create a blog with Laravel. In this episode, we will add a form to create a new blog post. So here we can add a title, text, submit, and we will also create a blog show page, which is a simple card layout that lists the title and full content of a blog post. In this lesson, you will learn important topics such as data validation and how to create new records and add them to the database. So let's begin. Let's begin with creating a new route inside our routes file. So we will call it get/posts/new, and it should go to post controller class and create method. So let's create a method. And it will return a view as well. So let's return a view post.create. And let's import this view class. And we can delete this class at the moment. So now let's create a view inside resources, views, posts, and let's call it create.blade.php. It should extend layouts.app file, and section will be content and section. So let's start writing HTML. So we will have a div, and it should have a background gray 50. Yes, and it should be full height. So inside it, let's create another div and give him class padding on top and bottom 16 and padding on the sides of 4. So let's create a heading, new post, and let's see how we're looking. So let's navigate to post/new. We can see the title right here. So let's make this text bigger, maybe 4XL, leading 10, tracking tight. Let's make the font bold and text gray 900. Let's look at it now. It's much bigger. So below this heading, let's create a div and give it the class of background white, shadow small, a margin on the top 5, padding on the sides 3, and padding on the top and bottom 4. And let's create a form right here. So the action should go to posts, and inside it, let's add the CSRF directive. So now if we go to the browser and inspect the page, and if we go to the form, we can see a hidden input with a name token and a value set to random text. So every time we create a HTML form in our web application, we need to include this secret token. And by using the @CSRF directive, Laravel will do this for us. We just have to include it inside our forms. And this will prevent the site from malicious cross-site request forgery exploits. So in case you're not familiar with cross-site request forgeries, I will link a link in the description down below to official Laravel's documentation page, which will explain it more in depth. So let's continue working on the form. So let's go to the code, and so let's start with working on a mobile friendly layout first. So let's add a text center class to the heading, and we can actually change this to padding 6. And form, let's add method post and set margin on the bottom to 0. So now let's create a label for title. The class should be block, which will set display to block because we want this to take up the full width. The text should be small, font medium, and color gray 700, and it should say title, and down below let's create the input for title. So name should be title, and class, so margin on the top, padding on top and bottom of 2, padding on the sides. It should also be block and full width. Let's also add a border, and border gray 400. Let's make it rounded medium, and shadow small, autofocus. So let's see. So when we refresh the page, the input is automatically focused. So let's open it for smaller devices. Looking good so far. Let's continue. So let's add another label for text, class, margin on the top of 6. It should be a block, so basically we can copy everything from the top, and the label should say text. And down below let's create a text area, name text, ID we don't need this, calls and rows we don't need this as well, and let's set a class, just copy this whole block, and let's see. So looking good so far. Down below let's add a button, post, and button type should be submit, and let's style the button. So let's give it a margin on the top of 6, padding on top of bottom of 2, padding on the sides of 4. It should be full width for mobile devices, and border transparent. So let's add a small shadow, and the text should also be small, and the font should be medium. Let's make it rounded. Let's make the text white, and the background should be indigo 600, and on hover let's make it indigo 700, so a little bit darker. And on focus let's make the outline none. So let's see. Looking good. So now we can scale the layout to larger devices. So for example, so this is a medium viewport. So as the Google Chrome suggests, it's for tablet screen sizes. So let's make a display for medium devices, a grid, and it should be a grid of 12 columns, and for medium screens it shouldn't have a padding on the sides. And let's add a call start 4 and call span 6. Let's see. Looking better. So we should add rounded medium to this card outline as well. So it looks good enough. Let's try submitting the form. We get an error, 404 not found. So that's because we've sent a post request to the post route, but this route does not exist yet. So let's create this route. So right here, route post. So when we send a post request to post endpoint, it should go to post controller class and store method. So let's create this method, public function store, and for example just return a random number. So now let's try submitting the form again. So submit, and it seems to be a bug. Let's go back to the form and add a / to the action, and let's try submitting the form again. we can see that it's working. So now we can take the data from the form and create a new post inside the database. So we can access the data using Laravel's built-in request helper method. So let's random request input and see what we get. So let's go to the form and let's enter test data and let's submit it. So we can see the title, the text, and the hidden CSRF token generated by Laravel. So now let's take these values and create a new post. So first of all, let's get the data from the request, and then let's create a new post model, and let's set post title to data title and post text to data text, and let's save the post to the database, and we can return the post to see the record that we have created. So let's go back, let's try submitting the form again. So test and submit. So here we can see the JSON object of our post, and if you go to the home page and let's refresh it, and we can see the post at the bottom of the list. So let's quickly order our posts so that new posts are at the top of the page. So we can use a Laravel's query builders method latest here, which will return the query builders instance, and then we can call a method get to get the records. And if we refresh the page, now we can see our new blog post at the top, and using the latest helper we'll sort our posts by creation date. So now let's go back to the post form and try submitting the form without any data, and we get an error. So the database expects title to be some kind of value and it cannot be empty. So we need to validate the data entered in the form. And the first thing we could do is create the validation from the client side, from the front end, and we can add the required attributes to our inputs. So required and required as well. And now if we go back to the form and try submitting, the browser will prevent us from submitting the form. So this is great, but it's never enough. So let's see how easily the front-end validation can be disabled. So if we open the DevTools again and select the inputs, we can delete those required attributes, and we can delete required right here. And if we submit the form again, we still get the same error. So the rule of thumb is this: you should never trust user input, even if you will be the only user of the application. So always validate on the front end, but more importantly, validate the data on the back end. So let's add the validation on the back end. So let's open up our terminal and let's open a new window, and let's run an artisan command to create a new request class. So PHP artisan make request post request, and this will create a new post request class inside app http requests post request. And here we can delete the authorize method because it's not important at the moment, and inside the rules method we can add the validation rules for our inputs. So for our title, it is a required input and it should be a string. It should have a minimum 5 characters, and let's make it maximum 255 characters for the title. And for the text, it should also be a required string, have a minimum 5 characters, but let's not limit the maximum length of the post. So now let's go to the post controller and let's import the post request class at the top. So use app http requests post request. And now we can type in the post request class inside the store method. So post request and Laravel will automatically resolve and inject the request class into this controller's store method. So in order to test everything, let's remove required attributes from the front end. And let's resubmit the form with empty fields and let's see what happens. So I'm clicking to submit a form, but it seems like nothing is happening. But if we and dump the errors variable inside the create view, so maybe at the top, so we can see the error back and we can see the validation messages. So for title, the title field is required, and for text, the text field is required. And these were generated automatically by Laravel because we provided required attributes right here. So it would be good to show these messages under our form when users try to submit the empty form. So let's delete this, and below the form, let's add an if statement to check if errors any, and if there are any errors, let's show a div with an ordered list, and let's iterate over all errors, all as error, and let's display the error. And let's see what we get. So we can see those errors at the bottom, so it's nice, but let's add some styles. So for this div, let's add a class margin top 6. And for the list, let's make the background red 100, add some padding on the top and sides, and rounded medium. So now it looks a little bit better. So let's add the required attributes to our inputs. So again, when I try to submit the empty form, the front-end validation will prevent me from submitting it. But if we add 3 characters to the title and 1 character to the text, we see a different validation message. So we can see it's working as well. But notice that every time we fail the validation, our inputs get deleted and we have to retype everything again. So what if we had really large block text, but we forgot to enter a longer title on the submit? We will lose all our entered data. Luckily, Laravel provides a helper method, old, which will repopulate the form inputs. So let's add it. So let's add value equal to old title. And the same for text area. So let's add old text, and let's test this again with the short title. If I can type test t, so we can see we don't lose the inputs, they are pre-filled. So this means that it's working correctly. Nice. So now we can go back to the post controller and delete the request helper method right here. And instead we can use our custom post request class, and we can access the validated data using the validated method on the request instance. So let's try submitting the form again. So test, submit. Let's make it pass the validation. And we can see the blog post was successfully created. Now it would be nice if every time we created a post, we would be redirected to the dedicated post page instead of seeing this JSON object. So let's create a new route that will show the blog post. So let's go to the routes and let's create a new route. Maybe right here, route get post, and it should go to post controller class and show method. So notice we are using a post parameter wrapped inside a curly braces. So this route will dynamically change based on past parameter. So I will explain it in a moment. For now, let's just create a show action inside the post controller. So show, and let's type in post model right here, and let's just return the post. So we should delete this. So the way this will work is when a user visits, for example, post/1 or post/2 or post/3 or any other ID, because we type hinted a post class right here in this method, Laravel will look in the database and search for a post with a given ID right here. So in this case, let's make it post1. So Laravel will search in the database for post with ID 1. And if the post record is found in the database, Laravel will inject it into this show method, and then we can return it. So if the post record is not found, Laravel will throw in 404 error, so we can test this. So if we go to post/7, we can see a post being returned with ID of 7. If we go to post6, we can see a post with ID 6, and it dynamically updates the content. But if we pass a ID that does not exist, so for example, post this number, we get a 404 exception. So now, instead of returning the post instant, let's return a new view, post.show, and let's pass it a post instance, post, and it should return a view. And let's create this view. So inside resources, use folder right here, post folder, show.blade.php, and let's copy the top of the page and section. And for now, let's just display the post title and post text. Let's see what we get. So if you go to post 7, we can see the post. We can also add a post ID. So post with ID of 7, post with ID of 6, 16 does not exist, 1, we can see the first post. So it's missing the styling, but the functionality is there. So now we can go back to the post controller, and instead of returning the post after the creation, let's return a redirect to the post show page. So return redirect, and the redirect should be to post, and let's just add post ID, and let's test this. So if we go to post/new, we can see that the route is not found because the Laravel will interpret the new keyword as a ID being passed right here. So we actually need to write this route, post new, above the post wildcard. And now if we refresh, we can see the form. Let's just enter something and let's post it. And success, we are redirected to the post page. So now let's add some styles. So let's close all the windows. Let's delete this and let's create a new div. Let's give it a class of background gray 50, padding top and bottom 16, padding on the size of 4, and on smaller devices it should be grid calls 12. So from smaller devices and up. And right here, let's create a div with class of sim call start 4, sim call span 6. Let's add the link for now to the slash, and inside the link let's create a div with the class of background white, text center, padding x4, padding y3, rounded small, shadow small as well, and on hover shadow medium, and let's make it say back. So let's see what we get. So we created a back button and it redirects to the home page of our application. So behind this button, let's create another div. So it should also have a class of background white, margin on the top 4, padding on the size 6, padding on the y6, rounded small, and shadow small. Inside it, let's create another div, and this div should have a class of flex and items center. Inside it, let's create another div. So this should have a class of flex shrink 0. So let's add a image right here, and we can actually copy it from the index page. This will be the author section. So let's search for image. So this should be good. See, also we added the author image, and below this let's create another div with class margin left 3, and let's add a paragraph class, text small, leading 5, font medium, text gray 900, John Doe. So basically we just copy and pasted this section just at the top. So actually let's not type this, and let's just copy this section with the date the post was created at, and add it below the author name, and we should have something that looks like this, John Doe. So let's delete this and let's see. So perfect. So now below this div, let's just create a div with class margin top 4, and it should be around the small and overflow hidden, and let's add an image. So for the source, let's just copy image from the index page, the default image that we have been using. So image, but let's remove the height class with full and object cover, it's okay. And below this, let's add the heading for the post title. The heading should have a class of margin top 6, text for Excel, leading 10, tracking tight, font bold, text gray 900, text center. So let's see what we get. So we see the image and the title being on the center. So I made a typo right here. Much better. And below the heading, let's add a paragraph with a class of empty6, heading 6, text gray 500, and this should be post text. Let's see. So let's go to the first post because it has more text and we can see everything clearer. So perfect. Now let's make these post titles links to the post. So let's go to the index, post.index, and so let's see where we iterate over the posts right here, and let's make the post title a link to the post. So let's wrap the heading inside a tag, and the href should go to /post/post id, and let's test it. So let's refresh the page. So when I hover on the heading and I click it, it redirects to the post. And if I go back and click on a different post, we get redirected. So we're making a great progress. I hope you find this video helpful and see you on the next one.